Let's bring in Dasha Burns, who's also here in Milwaukee, along with NBC News chief political analyst Chuck Todd and presidential historian Douglas Brinkley. So, Dasha, what do you know about the changing of the speech?
I mean, look, Katie, the basic run of show here hasn't changed, right? But everything about the tone, the tenor, and the spirit of this entire convention, including the former president's speech, has absolutely changed in spirit, in tone, and in tenor. This was going to be a very classically Trumpian event. His speech, as he told the Washington Examiner, was going to be, he said, a humdinger. It was going to go after Biden. It was going to do all of the things that we've come to expect from the former president at his rallies. The event was going to be, raucous, at times potentially incendiary, as we've seen at these events. That now seems to be something that the former president and his team themselves are trying to tamp down. Here's one of his aides today. Listen.
This is a moment in our country's history where we're in a tinderbox. There's so much political division. There's so many people who are hurting from the economic woes, that are hurting from the chaos at our southern border. You look at the families of Lake and Riley or Rachel Moore, and people have been impacted by this border invasion. We have to go and put our country in a different direction. We have to come together. Savannah, the disunity and the unrest that's happening at the national level just simply isn't good for the country. It cannot persist. We have to come together in this moment.
And of course, this has impacted everyone that's been watching. Everyone is feeling the effects of this in some way or another. But Katie, I got to tell you, I was there, and in talking to the people who were there, I mean, there is something indescribable about actually going through that experience. And if you're the former president and that bullet was inches, perhaps centimeters away from a lethal shot, that can have a serious and deep impact on a person. And it seems that he is leaning into that and walking into perhaps a different version of himself. We'll have to see how this transpires over the next few days. But the signs point to a very different type of event.
Yeah, Dasha, we heard over and over and over again as I was covering this weekend from people who were there. Obviously, they were shocked. It's a horrible experience to have to go through, but I was struck by one woman who said she decided to get in her car and drive to Milwaukee. She's not a delegate. She just wanted to go as a sign of support, so was going to drive from Pennsylvania. And I'm wondering how the people attending the RNC, the delegates, the people you've been speaking to, are reacting to what happened.
I mean, everyone is thinking about this. Everyone is talking about this. And a lot of people echoing the former president's call for unity. Take a listen.
It's a time to unite, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent, Black, White, Asian, I don't care. But something like that is inexcusable, and I hope I never have to see it again.
We should all be disturbed by the violence, and the magnitude of violence in that regard, as far as assassination or shooting someone. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. Everyone should be bothered by what happened yesterday.
I think the divisive rhetoric in this country needs to come to an end. I think we need to come together as a country and really realize, hey, let's debate the issues, let the vitriol cease.
And guys, as I've been traveling the country, talking to voters this entire election cycle, there has been such a heaviness, such a bleakness reflected in their sentiments when it comes to politics as we've been having this conversation. That everyone that I've met, just about everyone, is deeply saddened by the polarization in our country. And this event is just about the highest level, the starkest, darkest example of that. And what people are telling me now is this could go one of two ways. Either this starts to turn the tide in a different direction and brings people together, or this only deepens those divides. Guys.
Thank you, Dasha Burns. We appreciate your reporting on that, which brings me to you, Doug, and asking you on the historical perspective. Look, this nation has experienced extended periods of political violence. You think, of course, of the 60s, of the Kennedys, Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King Jr. You think of the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. We've had violent political rhetoric in our past. But what does history tell us about what Dasha just mentioned? Does this become a unifying force or just further entrench the divisions?
It has the potential to unify us, but boy, that's going to be a reach. The political divide is very large. I mean, I think the key of this moment, a little like after JFK was killed in 63, Lyndon Johnson had to run that famous 1964 convention in Atlantic City, and he kind of was teasing LBJ, who would be his VP, and trying to get the mood of the country going in a different way. The Beatles had done that earlier, but in a political realm, and it worked. In the sense that Johnson won and at least brought the country together in this very strong one direction. It happened to be progressivism. I think the important thing at a convention is to have fun. People have been coming there for a long time. They, just like when Trump was shot in Pennsylvania, everybody was still and didn't quite know what to do. There'll be at a convention like this, they need President Trump to break the ice with some humor. He's going to need a couple of one or two liners. He's already unspooled the kind of idea of saying to a reporter, you know, look, I should have been dead. I shouldn't even be here. Or I think working with script writers, getting a couple boom, boom, funny lines, relax people at some point, in addition to honoring the dead and injured of that horrible event, and then pick the VP, but he's running the VP like The Apprentice in reverse. I mean, Apprentice, it's all this thing. Who is it going to be to get fired? You're watching. Here you're looking at this process of who's the big-time winner. And, you know, really right now, I think it's looking towards Vance, but it's an equal playing field.
Chuck, you and I have been in a moment like this together so many times. So many times in 2016 when the rallies got violent, when Donald Trump increased the violent rhetoric himself. January 6th, obviously, we were together watching that unfold. We've come to all these inflection points, and yet it's only gotten worse. It's not gotten better, it's gotten worse. What is this moment going to be?
Look, I'm just trying really hard not to presume the worst. I'll just be honest. I think, obviously, if you look back, you're like, we keep getting worse, not better. But I've also believed the reason this presidential race has been stuck is I think the country wants to move on, and they don't think either gentleman can do it. Look, this is the opportunity for Donald Trump now. I didn't think he was going to get another chance to speak to people who were probably not going to vote for him. But he actually has that opportunity this week. How does he use it? Let's see. I think we're going to learn a lot. I am very curious. I don't want to presume that everything goes back to the way it was by the end of the week, because you just don't know. You go through something like that, it can change a person. So I think everybody is curious to see what does he do? What does he sound like? I understand past his prologue.
Yeah.
And I get that. But in a moment like that, I think at the end, like I said, he has an opportunity. How does he use it? Other previous leaders have had moments like this, and they have taken them and gone in one direction or the other. That's the opportunity he has. Which direction does he choose?
I mean, naturally, people are going to be skeptical, but if there's going to be any moment that's going to change you, it's going to be a brush with death like that.
That's right.
And I have gotten, in the conversations I've had with people who follow politics closely, this feeling of holding their breath that maybe this might change something, maybe, even understanding that it hasn't in the past with this candidate, this political moment that we're in. There's also so much whataboutism going on.
There's a ton of it. We're drowning in it.
How do we
look? I mean, this is where I'm going to go off on a tangent here. This is the tech companies. They have done this to us, where when you go online, the conversation is dominated by conspiracy theorists, left and right. When you talk to real Americans, they're like going, "Can we somehow tone this down? You know, can we have a debate about what the authority of the Constitution is without saying the Republic is at risk," right? Have a little more faith in the American people to make a decision about the democracy and to make this election feel as if it's Armageddon, which there are people on the left and the right have made this an Armageddon-like, that if our side loses, it's over. Well, to the wrong mentally disturbed person, they can hear that the wrong way. So I do think that we've got to be a little more realistic. Look, I think the left's been not focused on the right ways to campaign against Trump. I think they sit in way too many hypotheticals that are sort of 1% chances rather than focusing on what is he most likely to propose and have these conversations. Ditto with how the left goes after how the right goes after the left.
There's a lot of policy to discuss, a lot of proposals, the Project 125 stuff, but also the economic policy that you and I touched on the other day.
No, I mean, I think it's like he wants to raise taxes on everybody. Like, that's a huge issue.
But Democrats and independents, some of them will argue, look at January 6th, you got to take that seriously. I mean, if that isn't a threatening event for the democracy, what is?
Absolutely. And it's not, like, to me, it's fair game to bring that up. Look, this goes back to how the entire Biden Justice Department handled the beginning of this investigation. We have an unresolved investigation because I think, frankly, of an incompetent handling of it by the Justice Department.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.